All right, well, welcome everyone. This is our interview with Miriam Khalil. Did I say that correct?
You did?
Yay! And
Perfect.
I am Sarah Pearson, the assistant conductor with the Symphony of Northwest Arkansas. And we want to welcome all of our patrons and guests as we're getting started today. We're so excited to have Miriam today. Miriam, tell us where you're coming from.
I'm actually in Alberta right now, Edmonton, Alberta. It is extremely cold. We're yeah, there's like a cold warning. So just kind of really happy to be in the heat. It's not always this cold, but we're just having like some kind of weird cold spell at the moment.
I'm here
It
in
is cold,
Tennessee,
I'm not
and
gonna
it's
lie.
cold. It's cold here in Tennessee. I did a run this morning, and it was like 20 degrees. I'm like, and it's only supposed to get colder this week, so I feel you, right?
Yeah.
I think I talked to you. Just did a concert with Bob Bernhardt, who is my principal teacher there, and with Edmonton Symphony, and we were messaging back and forth, and he was like, "We're such wimps. We can't walk to the hall. It's like 1 degrees outside or something." I'm like, "Yeah, I would be a wimp too." It's pretty
But
cold.
here, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, I confess, but it's minus 27 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, that's pretty cold.
It's, yeah, I'll look it up later. It's cold. It's really cold.
So you were there and doing performances, much like you're going to be doing with the Symphony of Northwest Arkansas coming up fairly quickly, right?
Yeah,
Right
so
here
this
across the
weekend
bridge.
we did a Pops Christmas concert, which was really nice to sort of close off the season. And oh, it was so good. It was just a lot of fun. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So I want our audience to get to know you a little bit. This is our excerpt of Inside the Music with Miriam and the piece that you're going to be performing with us coming up January the 7th, right? Coming around really quickly. So I want our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So tell us what first got you into singing, performing, or and do you play any other instruments, do any other thing, like wear any other hats?
Oh, I'm so like I'm boring. Like, sorry, I don't play other instruments. I
Okay.
pretend to play the piano, like, but only, and my students know how bad it is. But all to say, I basically started singing. I started singing before I could speak, so that's always been there for me. And I grew up in Damascus, Syria, and so I was part of the church choir there with my father from the age of 3. And so I had 3 older brothers, and I would just annoy everybody because I'd be up early singing songs around the table, just marching to my own, to my own beat. And then, yeah, I just always knew I wanted to sing. So that was kind of a thing that's always been with me. I had my first solo for my first communion. I was 7. So, and then when I moved to Canada, the first thing I did was join the choir, and that was before I could even speak English. So, and that was kind of my way of assimilating and sort of finding my place as a person who didn't really fit in, and really like relearn how to socialize because it's just a completely different thing when you move somewhere at 7. And so that was kind of so it's always been with me. And then I just continued on. I had just really great people that I kind of met along my journey. So I had a great voice teacher that encouraged me to go into music. And then I had a great guidance counselor that was like, you should go into music therapy. But with music therapy, you need 2 years of music. So I majored in voice. And while I was there, I did an opera workshop class, and I realized this is everything. Like, it's everything. I had never been to an opera. So for me, had done pop and, a little bit of musical theater leading up to. And so going and like hearing, it was Dialogue of the Carmelites. So it wasn't even like an easy opera. Um, that was my first kind of like in to, wow, the music encapsulates what you're feeling, and the words are like, like you just stretch out into the kind of emotions of what the composer wanted. And I just completely just was taken by that. And that was it. That was the beginning of my journey. And I just veered off. I did not go into music therapy. I just continued on that path.
But I think even what you've chosen, your path still has an aspect therapy to it. You know, people come to
Yeah.
our concerts and to these events, and you know, they've come from all different walks of life, you know, and different, you know, challenges with the human condition, and that speaks to them. So even though it looks a little bit different than what you first thought, I think you still are fulfilling that. That's so cool too, to know that you were you grew up in Damascus. Did your families, did jobs transfer, or it was just like a choice to relocate to Canada?
Uh, Immigration. So my mom had family in Ottawa, which is
Okay.
the capital of Canada. And my dad came in 83 and he said, "Oh, too cold." And then
Yeah.
in around 87 he said, we got to do something here. Like, things are changing. I don't think it's getting better. So they put in the papers and we got accepted. So that was great. And then we moved. So it wasn't like an emergency situation. Like, there was like a few years
Awesome.
where my dad and my mom had like really talked about it and thought about it. And so when we eventually did move, like, I was, as a child, I was kind of like emotionally prepared for it. I don't think my brothers were, they were a lot older. For me, I just thought, oh, I'm going to see cousins. Like, we had family in Syria, but a lot of them had moved away. And so a lot of my cousins were older in Syria rather than cousins that were my age. And so when we moved to Canada, I had cousins that were my age or my best friends. And so it just was a very cool, and I had met them already because they'd come and visited. And so I knew who I was going to see and who I was going to be with. So that was kind of cool for me.
That's cool. I didn't move like across the world, like the globe, like you did, but I moved when I was 14 from Virginia to Tennessee, and that was pretty, I mean, pretty tough. You know, I had
Yeah.
already, as I was in high school and starting to establish my friend groups in a solid way, you know, and so that was kind of hard because we didn't have family or anybody here. So I could see why your older brothers would have been challenged by that. So you started growing up singing in a choir.
Yeah.
And then it naturally progressed to other things. I think that that's, you know, a lot of us, the choirs are very, really important. And in our concert that we have coming up in January, we're doing Bernstein's Chichester Psalms. So we'll have our Sona singers doing that. That's kind of cool. So it kind of comes full circle for you.
Yeah.
So you said that you were in choirs and in that early interaction. Who do you think inspired you to make music, or what inspires you continually to do that?
Oh gosh, well, my dad's an amazing singer. Like, he's not a professional singer, or like, he's just like a natural, I don't know. It's like a gift from God. I have no idea. Like, he's, knock on wood, it's like a real blessing. He opens his mouth and he just knows how to make correct, incredible, gorgeous sound. So we would always sing, like, we always sang on trips. So that was kind of, my dad was a huge inspiration. My mother, who always says, she's like, well, you got the beauty from him and the power from me, because
That's awesome.
she also loved to sing, but she didn't always have the nicest tone, but she always had, the passion. And so she, like, in our house there's always music playing. And it's funny, my brothers listen to heavy metal, which is like completely different. But we listened, my parents listened to Fairuz, and which is like one of the most famous Lebanese singers, and Kulthum, and all these very, very kind of iconic voices. And so they had like, when they kind of saw that I was interested, they would play these songs and say, well, listen to this one. And so I always had like this really wide palette of sounds.
Right.
And yeah, like, I think, I don't know if it's just culturally different, but like, we go to parties and people would sit and sing, and like my dad would take out the accordion, and like somebody would like have oud or something, and we'd all just like sing, so that's what I remember from being in Damascus. Obviously that changed when we moved to Canada. It was a very different life, um but that's kind of like what would happen at parties. And I remember we'd watch these like talent shows from France where like the kids would go up and sing. And I would always say to my mom, you got to put me on that show. Like, and she'd be like, honey, it's in France. Like, we can't, not, just didn't get it. I was like, no, like, what's so hard? Like, I'm better than these kids. Like, that was my attitude. I was always very like, I would win that competition, mom, you know.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so when we finally eventually moved, you know, things kind of shifted, and my first kind of experience in the choir in Canada was a song by Whitney Houston called "The Greatest Love of All,"
Mm.
and I came home and I was crying. I said, "This is the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my life." And so my brother went out and bought me a Whitney Houston cassette,
Aw.
um, and and it was Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. But I remember like he got me those two tapes. Like I love how I feel so old when I say tapes, but it is what it is. And I remember just like playing The Greatest Love of All just so much, and that became kind of my song, my anthem. So
That's cool. So it's like your go-to. Like I think we all have somewhere that we go to, like whether it's a instrumental piece or a song like that, that it's like your jam, so to speak.
well, it's funny because when you're a kid, like, and like my son's 8. Okay, so I see my, and we moved actually to Alberta when he was 7, so it's like it's a very parallel
Oh, okay.
weird thing. But I'm like, oh my gosh, she was so small. And like for me, I felt like an adult, you know, I felt like I'd lived a life, right? But I often tell my husband, I'm like, it's weird because now that I'm here, it's like that life didn't exist. It's like a weird dream, that Damascus part of my life. I don't know if it's the same for you from.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, well, for a lot, a lot of different things because of my journey, even in music, to get to being a conductor. But I feel like I've lived several lifetimes. I don't know
Yeah.
if you feel the same way. That like every 10 years, like there's a new like I
Yeah.
wow, it feels like forever ago, and we're
Mhm.
fairly young too.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, so it's an interesting kind of like break in the life. And when now, even now when I listen to Greatest Love of All, it's like, you know, it's a pretty like cheesy song. I still cry. Like I still, because that was a song where at school I was, you know, kind of bullied a little bit. You know, no one knew what to do with me. I didn't speak English. And then I don't remember learning English. I remember not speaking and then speaking English. It was
Mm.
like this weird
Version of it, probably.
way.
Now,
Yeah.
do you speak French too? 'Cause that's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. And so I remember everyone was doing a talent show and they were like mouthing, it was, what is it, lip syncing, like a lip sync thing. And I didn't have any songs, and I just said to the teacher, well, can I sing a song? And that's the first time that they were like, I guess. And we were doing auditions for the whole class, and I whipped out a tape for Whitney Houston and I sang The Greatest Love of All. And she was like, oh, and they put me in the talent show, but actually singing. And that was just very nice, you know. And so that was my way of kind of, I remember that was the first time where people were like, oh, you're more than like a person that doesn't speak a language. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that
Like,
was a very distinct
yeah.
shift for me. Hmm.
Yes, I can. I work my day job outside of being a conductor. I work at a Title I girls' school. It's the first Title I charter girls' school in the state of Tennessee, and we have probably 50% Black African American, 50% Latino, and many of my students don't speak English, and so we are constantly finding ways to communicate. So I could totally see that, and and when things that they connect with, especially music, their face just lights up, and it's just like, okay, we can make this happen for you.
Yeah,
So I could totally see that.
very special.
So if you could, let's see, I want to, because we've kind of covered a lot of these, so without me
Mhm.
asking any more questions, it's really great. What is your favorite kind of music that you go to? Obviously, you sing opera, but what is like your jam? Like, what do you sing in the shower, or like your favorite? You talked about Whitney Houston, that was your inspiration, that song.
It's so funny. I feel like a real fake because I don't really listen to music a lot. I have 2 kids that listen to a lot of music. So for me, I'm like, just turn it off.
No, that's okay. That's
But
who you
I
are.
think I think, you know, I kind of like I don't even know what style that would be, but like Queen would be kind of my, like that's the one where I'm like, okay, we all need a break from not, no offense to Michael Jackson. I love Michael Jackson and Third Eye Blind. God love them. But let's listen to some Freddie Mercury. Why not? You know? Like, so I will never get sick of Freddie Mercury for some reason. I love his voice and anything that he sings. So that's kind of my kind of reprise. And then, you know, it's so funny because we did like a car trip a couple of years ago, and that's the first time where I was like, I'm gonna make a playlist. And it was hilarious what was on it. Like, you know, Lenny Kravitz, like I don't know, like all these just like old time rock, but like soft kind of rock. I don't know what that would be. So yeah, soft rock, I guess.
Like my playlist, they're very eclectic. Like I have something of everything. My
Yeah,
husband and kids listen to it. They're like, "Where did that come from?" I'm like, "You just don't judge, right?"
yeah, exactly.
So, who is the like a musician like in your field, like for opera, that you like aspire to, that maybe has encouraged you? I know like for conductors we have people that were like, wow, they really resonate with me. Like I know we talked about like what we like to listen to outside of our field, but what
Mhm.
is is there someone that you have been inspired by?
I have, I've just been very lucky. Like my voice teacher, Wendy Nielsen, is like a mentor to me. And she's been incredible. She's been part of my journey since I think like I left the Young Arts program at the Canadian Opera Company. And then the year I had my first son, I did some crazy things. Like I sang 5 weeks after, like
Oh
I
wow.
did a few concerts. And so I did 3 roles within the span of something like 4 months. It was mental. I did Susanna, Melisande, and Elvira. But the Elvira was more of a like a young artists
Mhm.
program at Banff.
Yeah.
And at the time, one of the people that I really looked up to was coming to teach at Banff, and it was Judith Forst. And she is a really well-known Canadian mezzo.
Mhm.
Um, she's done everything, and you know, it's incredible. So I was just shaking in my boots because I had met her at an after party. She was very kind, but again, that's different. And here she is sitting listening to me sing, and I was just very nervous. And she came up to me and she's like, well done, great. And then she told my husband that I have a really incredible, beautiful voice. And then I was just like crying and like, you know, just things like that, that sort of you, when you think that of someone else and then they say that about you, it's a whole different thing. So she's been on my journey since. So she's always asking what I'm singing. She's always pushing me to think about the next step. So I started out a young lyric, soprano, light lyric, and I wasn't, but well, I don't know if I wasn't, but my voice was shifting from there when I met her. Um, and so she was like, you need to stop singing that repertoire immediately and move into bigger repertoire. You're full lyric now. So she's always kind of telling me to kind of go to that next place. And so she's recently told me that next step too. And I thought, okay, like she's like a bit of a guardian angel. She says, you know, she's always like, you need to let things go. If you want to keep moving in your career, it might not be in the same direction that you imagine, but you need to move on from repertoire. You can't just, you're not always going to sing the same rep. You're not going to sing the 20-year-olds for the rest of your life. And some people can because their voices stay there, but my voice is moving, and she's you just have to move with your voice. You can't just try and put it in a box, you know, and that's just a really important lesson.
That's wonderful. The people that are our cheerleaders, so to speak, whether they're teachers or the people that we have been inspired by, like her, that those are really, really important. They kind of keep us going forward. I think in my own life, like Bob, you know, you just worked with Bob Bernhardt, you know, he's my principal teacher and I still stay connected with him. And like, they are the ones that kind of journey this with us, and we see what they've done. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And like even Joanne Folletta would be kind of like your latest person that's inspired you, that, you know, like, all right, you have done this, but don't just settle here, you know,
Yeah.
keep moving forward, you know, same thing. So want to ask you and kind of talk a little bit about the piece that you're going to perform with us with Sona coming up. What is your process like? You get, because you were saying your voice is changing, you're naturally, moving into bigger repertoire for being a fuller lyric. What is your process like when you prepare for new music?
It's the same every time. I sit down, I learn the notes very slowly, as slow as I can, and then I put the words to it. It's very boring, but,
No, it's important.
but
To
it's
our
very
audience, it's not
important. It's very important. And then I coach. Once I feel like I can actually sing it on my own,
Mhm.
then I bring it to a coach, and then I sing it with accompaniment and piano and someone that kind of hears the problems. Oh, here you're kind of a little flat, or the phrasing is not quite right. An external ear, a coach or a teacher. So Wendy is in Toronto, and will often do things on Zoom, but I like to have someone. Yeah, exactly. So it's just important to have somebody though in the room also, because I I have taught on Zoom and I have taught in person, and just knowing that sort of um, balance of sound, like you'll hear something quite loudly on Zoom, but maybe it's not as opulent in the space. My husband's just walking in. I'm just doing a recorded interview.
Now he's like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as you're preparing for this piece, and that your process sounds very similar to like a lot of us, just really knowing the music inside and out, and then getting an outside perspective so that it really takes it off of just being notes on the page. This particular symphony is one that it's been kind of nicknamed or titled a Symphony of Sorrowful Songs. Do you want to talk a little bit about the work and just maybe the lyrics, because we will be having those translated, because obviously it's not in English.
Yeah, and it's in Polish. And I just wanted to say one more thing about the process, because I don't often sing in Polish. And I think the big thing is working with someone who's Polish, right? So it's actually working on the language and understanding not just the sounds, but the meanings, and how that resonates sort of within our own bodies, and how we kind of relate. I'm just pulling up the words here. 1 second.
That's okay. It's in 3 movements. So while you're getting that pulled up,
Yeah.
there's a talk to our audience about it. And the first is the longest movement. It's what we would call like a canon. And then it's back and forth. And then the soloist interrupts singing this like a lament, right?
Yeah. It's a lamentation, and it's like the Virgin Mary to Jesus. So it's share your wounds with your mother. And because, dear son, I have always carried you in my heart and always served you faithfully, speak to your mother to make her happy, although you are already leaving me, my cherished hope.
Yeah.
So it's it's hopeful, but it's also very, very sad. It's a relationship between mother and son as well, and like seeing that beauty of, I think a mother seeing a child suffering, or just seeing any, it's a very difficult thing. But then also there's a relationship between mother and child that is there forever. Like they come from your body. They're literally part of you. So it's a very beautiful anyway. Yeah, so I think the big thing is taking away is the relationship between mother and child, and that sort of empathy for the mother and for the child, but the empathy of the mother watching her child in really difficult circumstances.
Yeah, and it's kind of it's a look back to like neo-Renaissance almost, because it's a text taken out of the 15th century, which that's like a long time ago, right? Our audience is probably going, that's like way back, right? But in this limit, and then it goes into the second movement talking about just kind of the maternal words. And it's a 18-year-old female, right? That she is, if I'm not mistaken, she was in like a prison, right? and then just kind of her perspective. And then the last one is the third movement is a text like of folklore, like Polish folk
Yeah.
song. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You want to speak any about that final movement?
Just pulling it up.
Yeah.
You're putting me on the spot. Sorry.
Sorry. Oh, I can talk about it, but
Oh
it's
no, it's
derived
fun.
from the folk song, right? You know, it's the
The
their
third one is, where has he gone, my dearest son? Perhaps during the uprising, the cruel enemy killed him. Ah, you bad people, in the name of God, the most holy, tell me, why did you kill my son? So it's these themes that are recurring. And when you think about sort of where the world is
yeah.
and how these themes just keep recurring in every society. Um, and so it's not just one thing. It's sort of how we sort of, people empathize with mothers, I think, a lot. But I think the big thing is that it's not one theme. It's us sort of reliving these terrors. And I know that it's so dark, but the piece is so beautiful. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And to kind of give the audience, I mean, and you'll find that they'll find this in the links that I have posted for Inside the Music and some listening examples. But it starts with the low double bass, and
Yeah.
it's just like it's almost, and it's a haunting, like beautiful, like motif theme that happens over and over. It kind of prepares the the lament, so to speak, from the soloist when you come in.
It's like a pulse. It's like an inner pulse that sort of is um, not just moving, but it's like the world is sort of,
Yeah.
you can kind of almost feel the whole world pulsing. Um, and that is kind of our interconnected, like we're all connected, but our kind of inner souls sort of feeling all that pain together. And I really do, sorry, not to get very deep, but I don't think that bad things can happen somewhere and we can just kind of live happily. I think we all internally feel that, whether we want to address it or not. I think we're all a big collective, and this is what this piece is about, I think.
Yeah. Well, we can't wait for you to have you in person with Sona coming up on January 7th. So this has been wonderful to get to know you better and for our audience and be able to kind of have a glimpse into a little bit about the piece, your process, and what it means to you. And the concert title is A Mother and Child, and just really looking at the human condition, you know, much like you're talking about the piece. And we're just so excited. Do you have any last things that you would like to share as we finish up today?
No, I'm incredibly excited. I love this piece. I cannot wait to let it soar and feel, oh my God, the orchestra. I'm just really, really excited. I'm so pumped. So thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm really delighted.
Well, I can't wait to meet you and to be able to work with you there at Sonar. And I know our audience is going to just fall in love with your voice and be able to have that interaction with you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, Miriam, we'll see you very soon. And you have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all of the things. And happy holiday. And we will see you on January, probably before the 7th, obviously, because we'll be in rehearsal. But we want to just thank you again for your time. And we will see you soon. Have a good one. Thank you.